Hello and welcome to this third video in our topical map series here on YouTube. Now we finally dive into building a topical map together. The topical map will be for a law firm based in Sydney. This is not a real client of mine. It's just a project that I think will be cool to do together. So let's start by looking at what should go into the topical map. These 4 areas that I have here are a good place to start. What I'm suggesting here is that we look at locations. So in this case, we say that the law firm is based in Sydney, and we should also note that that's in the state of New South Wales, because there could be state laws that make divorce or separation different from other cities. Then we also want to talk about the problems that users experience. In the case of a family law firm, the users or customers would be experiencing an unhappy marriage, potentially custody fight, or relationship issues. So that's another area that we go down deeper into later. And then the services that the firm provides. So a prenup or a binding financial agreement could be a service that a family law firm provides. Now here under the job title, we're not done here yet. We want to add more things to it. And I think the best way to do that is by inventing a persona of somebody who will be the lawyer, and then giving that persona actual titles and a career history and so on, to make it a bit easier for us to think about this topical map. So I've given this lawyer the name John Bale, and he's the main family lawyer for the website that we are going to create the topical map for. In the first stages of building a topical map, it's really about educating yourself. You can't build a good topical map without actually understanding the topic in depth yourself, because you're really trying to create all of the relationships that exist between the lawyer, the client, the courts, and the products, the services, the locations. You're trying to create a map that includes all of that. So without knowing the topic, I don't think it's possible to create a good topical map. Yeah, that's pretty much it, full stop. You will always be lacking something when you don't understand the topic well. You can create a topical map just through keyword research. However, that's going to be very limited, because just through the keyword research, you still don't know what topics should be interlinked together, for example. And that should also be part of the topical map. So that's why we're taking a bit of our time here with actually researching the first steps. And I would now get started and research some family law firms in Sydney and gather more information about the main family lawyer here, what kind of qualifications he might have. Cool. So we're diving here in the About Us, and we also have a look at the services. So they talk about de facto relationships, and then they have articles as well. Francis Edwards. So this is what we are interested in. We want to know the qualifications and potentially job titles as well. Law Society, accredited specialist, family law, qualified mediator, practicing since. Cool. So this gives us a good idea. This is something we can certainly use for our persona. Let's look at some other family lawyers here. Senior associate. I would probably give my family lawyer the senior associate title. Law Society of New South Wales. That's interesting. that could be a separate part of our topical map to talk about that law society. And we would work out the angle for that later on. Okay, and here's now the staff members of the paralegals. We'll look at one more. So I'll use my shortcut here to bring up the Google Cache through a browser bookmark, which makes it a bit easier to paste this into ChatGPT. Because what we want to do now is to grab the services that this lawyer would provide and make that a bit easier to digest. The reason why we want the services is we want to link from the profile later on from this lawyer to the service pages, creating really good internal links. Great, so from ChatGPT we were able to extract quite a bit. The prompt was not particularly fancy. We just said, let's extract information about the lawyer from this page. I want to know the services he provides and the methods and qualifications. And then we pasted the text from the Google Cache. And now we have here the services that he is providing. So he helps people with their de facto relationships, with financial agreements such as a prenup and parentage disputes, acrimonious parenting matters. I'm not sure what that means. We definitely need to research that. Child support and relocation. So that's fantastic. These could all be internal links that then go from his profile to the specific service pages. In the next step, we're looking at the specific situations of individuals who would be searching for these services, because it's really important to understand the relationships between essentially the service and then the person who's looking for that service. In that person's life, especially with family law, there are certain things that are happening, and we need to understand these situations clearly in order to create content later on for our site and to structure our sitemap in a way that the whole user journey can be covered in a sufficient way. So we've asked ChatGPT for the services that this lawyer provides. Let's give an example of a person and their situation who would need this service. So for example, for property settlements, somebody who has been divorced or is looking to divorce and has significant assets, let's say a house, would need the property settlement expertise or service from Lachlan. So then we've got somebody who's looking for maintenance, which means that they have been separated and they can't support themselves, and therefore they look to get a maintenance fee from the ex-partner, and that could be a topic or service to cover as well. So I think this is really helpful to think about your customers' underlying problems that would have caused them to search for that service, and to include that in your topical map. So now for the services, we will just use the services that we previously had found, and we'll use the split function here to split them up into separate cells. We're just looking for the colon, and then we can drag that down. So here in this text there was a colon, and I just wanted to split that up into two separate cells. Then we can go Control-Shift-V to remove the formulas once that's done, and then also remove the first helper row that we had there in column A. All right, cool. That's looking a lot better. Now we have the client information here, which would be an example of a situation that a client could find themselves in when they need one of the services that this law firm provides. Each of the services would, of course, be a separate page, and we would then also include that in the sitemap and map keywords to these pages. So we are finally ready to make our first entry into our topical map. It will be the profile page of our family law associate John Bale. And in our sitemap, we have here the main topic, which is mainly just a reminder for yourself of what this is about. So we're going to have also the Family Law Act of 1975. We'll talk about that later, but just really broadly what this is about. The title tag, this one can be actually what it should be in search results. Same for the URL and the image URL. However, the description here, that's more of a description for your internal purposes. That's not the meta description. Just for internal use. So that you can remind yourself of what you're intending to do for this page on this overview tab here, which is your topical map. Image URL, I decided to go with John Bale Family Lawyer for the purpose that we want, when we embed that image into other pages such as Family Lawyer Sydney, it will be helpful to have an image that has that keyword inside of the URL. Family Lawyer will be one of the top keywords we're trying to rank for, but we don't want to make the title tag for John's own page Family Lawyer, because that could be a keyword cannibalization. If we have a page for Family Lawyer Sydney and we're also creating the profile page John Bale Family Lawyer Sydney, in the title tag, that's a problem, right? But if we just have it in the image, and we're also not saying Family Lawyer Sydney, because we could embed that image in other pages. Maybe there will be another suburb where it's not helpful to have Sydney as the inside of the image URL. So we want to plan to quite a few details, as you can see here, for all of the important areas of our sitemap. And then image alt tag, that would vary. So if I do it for the image alt tag on a Sydney Family Lawyer page, I would use an image alt tag of John Bale Family Lawyer Sydney, close to exact match. However, on his profile page, I would just call him John Bale Family Law Associate, most likely. Okay, cool. So now you know what the main ingredients to our topical map are. And it's probably also a good time to talk about the website architecture or folder structure. I'm looking at another site here which is not using any folder structures. Well, they have some, but it's very messy overall, the way that their site is structured. What you can do is research the competitors' folder structures by finding a folder that you're interested in our case Family Lawyers, and then checking what they have under that folder. So they have prenuptial agreements, father's rights, domestic violence. Let's see what it is that they're talking about here. It's a very thin topical map that they have. Like you can see here that they maybe have 50 words of text on this page. And they're also using potentially automated related post systems, which is not a good idea because you're confusing Google as to what the really important pages are on your website. If you're linking to everything, then nothing is important. So there's definitely quite a few ways how we can beat this website with a better and more logical site architecture, combined with better content briefs later on. That will be a video in itself, the content briefs. Cool. So far, I think we've done a decent job of looking into the professional side of things, and we've also looked a little bit into the services, even not that much. But the most time should be spent actually on the problems in this case that the users have, because a lot of that would be very personal circumstances that they have questions about, meaning if we just start to move this out of the way, some people, basically if you are a father and you have a question about the law, what if I'm the father and I want full custody of my son, then the answers might be specific to that, and you might be looking for answers specifically for that. So we need to break that down further. So the father would have specific question, mother, grandparents could also be involved. Custody, child support. So this custody stands for child custody here in this case. Child support and maintenance payments. That was in case the other party in the relationship can't maintain their lifestyle that they had while they were together. And in that case, maintenance payments might be discussed or typed in. For the mother, there would be similar questions. I will also put visitation. For both of them, that would be important. And then grandparents would be wondering if they can still spend time with the child if it's with the ex-partner now. So so really it's visitation hours that grandparents would likely be interested in. Some rare cases, I guess, if both parents are not fit, grandparents might be interested in custody, but that would be quite rare and might not need to be discussed, but it could set us apart later if we have information on that. But I wouldn't make it a big part of the topical map, is I guess what I'm saying there. So we're coming to the end with our third lesson here about the topical maps. In this lesson, we have covered the research approach by looking at the different angles on the team side of things, in this case for the family lawyers, and looking at the problems that the clients or customers have. In this case, we've broken it down into father, mother, and grandparents, and then what they might be interested in, and then also people who are married with no kids, and then people who have no kids and are in a de facto relationship, and each one of them would be interested in separate things, which will be quite important to take note of for our internal linking and also for our content briefs, because we don't want to cover a topic in a way that it includes certain things that people are not interested in, for example. So if there's an article clearly about a non-married couple with no kids, then we don't need to talk about child custody, and probably also don't need to link to child custody pages, because there's no chance they would click on it and read other articles on that topic. All right, so you've also learned the parts of our topical map here, how we're going to set it up. Overall, I think it is a good idea to break this down into separate sections. So you have your internal team section here. We're going to have our services, and then we have our, in this case, we'll have, let's call it law, and that's where the Family Law Act would come in. And you can see here that for each client situation, such as somebody in a de facto relationship, we've also mapped it to a law reference. So what defines a de facto relationship, which is a relationship where people are not married, but they're still considered to be in a relationship and have the same rights as a married couple, essentially. That is defined in section 4AA of the Family Law Act in Australia. So that's important that we have that reference, so that we know that from each section, from the Family Law Act page, we can link to the de facto relationship and vice versa later on. Now, one thing to note also on the folder structure. So there's the question now, if you want to go with a solid folder structure which could look something like this: family law, and then we could have the Family Law Act behind that here, for example. Or if you want to go with a hybrid silo structure or virtual silo, where you have essentially no folders at all, and you would just have separate pages for that. So it would be just the Family Law Act and then Family Lawyer, for example. My preference would be on the first example here to have a fixed folder structure, which makes it a bit easier for you to organize things. For reporting purposes, it's also easier because you can include certain folders and report on them. And in my view, it's also easier for search engines to understand your website if things are clearly categorized into folders. You don't have to do it. You can still create a fantastic topical map without a physical folder structure, but I would say it's a slight advantage, if not just for yourself to stay organized and to force you to think into which category does this page or topic belong to. The one thing, if you are working with WordPress, creating these categories is slightly difficult on blog pages. So if you're looking to use the WordPress post function, then usually the posts appear under the blog section, and that gets a bit hard to do or to put into categories, because if you put family law, and then you would want to have a child under family law, which is the Family Law Act, for example. Now you've got a problem where it's not possible under WordPress post to map children to parent pages. That's only possible under the pages architecture in WordPress. So you would want to probably set up your website so that it's using the pages in order to make it easier to make this subfolder here a child of this parent folder in WordPress. So this is just in case you're using WordPress, and I don't want you to run into that issue where you struggled to use folders because you're using the posts. Cool, I hope that was helpful, and in the next video we keep on building out this folder structure and the topical map. In the next video we'll look at Wikigraph. We'll also look at a competitor's sitemap, and we'll pass that with ChatGPT and Po.com, which has 100k token limit through what's the model? I forgot the model name now, but we can basically process around 70,000 words through Po.com, and that's where we will pop in the competitor's sitemap, and we'll find some creative ways to relatively quickly build out and organize our sitemap. But this first session here on actually doing the research is super important, because we need to understand our customers and all of the related entities and searches as well. Cool. In the video after that, so what I've put here will be the video number 4. I should say lesson number 4. And then in lesson number 5, we will do keyword clustering finally. Actually, in lesson number 4, we can also look at the carrot clustering, which is just a nice visualization. While we're looking at Wikigraph, which is a visual thing, we might as well look at the carrot clustering. And then later in lesson 5, we do the traditional keyword clustering. All right, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.